welcome. Not too bad, just 10 minutes late.
That's good. That's early. That's early for us.
Welcome to the Love Your Life workshop. Bob, welcome.
Thank you.
Always start off with a joke, you might say. Just get everybody smiled and loosened up, or at least grown. We are in a recession. So even the jokes are a little,
We've noticed.
I don't know if I'd buy it.
let me give you,
You gotta work harder. It's just been a lot of years.
I get some of my jokes from a place called Pretty Good Jokes, so it's either pretty good. But, don't know which one. There was a nun who kept exposing herself to a congregation. The priest took her aside and said, why are you doing this? She says, I have a bad habit.
You're getting a head shake down.
I'll stop there. But welcome to the Love Your Life workshop. And man, I keep, one of our phrases is be the person you love, or as I like to say, be the person you most want to be. And that's been a guiding mantra for me for a few years now. Be the person you most want to be. And I do keep, and I hope that's helpful to you, I do keep coming back to that in my days, where I go through a day maybe where I'm not the person I most want to be, and I'll think, who do you most want to be, And so it's a good question for me anyway. I hope it is for you. And so once in a while, it was kind of borne out also of, a lot of times we see people that we really like certain characteristics, certain people we really like to be around or something. You're like, wow, I really like, and it makes me stop and think, well, what is it I like about them? And why can't I be like that within my own personality? Because we all have different personalities. And so some of these things are not as simple. Sometimes not as simple as that, like I want to be a person who wakes up ready to start a new day. Now that's going to look different with each person. It's going to look different even with each day with this, because sometimes I don't feel so ready to start a new day at 4:45 in the morning. And yet that's the person I want to be. So it helps fuel that, as I stay with that day after day. But I was thinking about, the person I most want to be is a hopeful person. Even as we live in a world that just seems so increasingly insane, and yet to still retain a sense of hope and passion in the world, in the midst of violence and incredible sorrow, and still believe in joy and love, and even though we recognize all these things going on. I want to be the person I most want to be likes people. The person, in spite of knowing that what people are made of and what we're all made of, but still likes people, still wants to encourage people, wants to see the best in people. The person I most want to be sees love as the most important thing that we can accomplish in a day. The person I most want to be has a deep undercurrent of joy, and which may not look like giddiness or happiness, but there's that undercurrent of joy and not despair, because we live in a world in which it's so easy for despair to overtake us. The person I most want to be is a person who's present in the moment. And this is one that's kind of nearer to me because it's so difficult for me. But I was listening to a TED Talk recently, maybe one you shared with me, that said that they've done some sort of research that suggests that people may be lost in their thoughts 50% of their lives. And so the point of the speaker was, if we could just change that a little bit, think about half of your life is spent lost in your thoughts and not present in the moment. And for a person who felt like I spent at least for many years of my life, probably about 80% lost in my thoughts, you know. And I remember a speaker one time saying that Jesus was fully aware of every moment of who he was with. He gave himself totally to that moment, that person. And that just resonated with me because I felt like I was like 90, 10%, you know, 10% aware. And, but to be fully present in the moment without thinking about the past, without worrying about the future, without being self-conscious and worrying about what other people think of me, but to be aware, you know, in the moment. And most of all, maybe, and I was thinking about this before I even realized it was Thanksgiving, but really, the person I most want to be is a grateful person, and or a thankful person, which simply they think comes from an old English word where they said they were full of thanks, you know, is what it means. But, and once again, that looks different with each one of us, you know, and so, not trying to define what a thankful person looks like, but that's the person I want to be, is a thankful person. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't come naturally. It hasn't come easy to me to be a thankful person. And so I just want to explore for a couple minutes and then see if, you know, it resonates anything you want to discuss, or you can talk about anything in the world you want, if this doesn't. But I was thinking about being a thankful person and what helps to be thankful. So I was thinking about a story. I spent a good bit of time in my life reading the Psalms and in the Bible, and probably one of my favorite, well, not probably, one of my favorite Bible characters is David, you know, and so he had a lot of Psalms that talked about thanks, you know. There's in the Psalm 119, which is the huge, long chapter, Psalm, he says something like, I rise at midnight. At midnight I rise to give thanks. And what an interesting thought, you know, like he was so full of thanks that he would just wake up at night and be full of gratitude for life. And he had one psalm, I think it's 136, where he just say, over and over, give thanks to the Lord, he's good. His love lasts forever. Give thanks to the Lord. Now, this doesn't come from a sheltered person. And that's why it kind of resonates with me. David was not a sheltered person. As a young kid, you know, he was the one left out taking care of the sheep while his brothers were all doing other things. You know, in the story when Samuel comes into town to anoint the next king, nobody knows that's why he's there. And David's father has a big celebration, and Samuel says, I want to meet your sons, and he brings them all out, except David. Talk about being the forgotten kid, you know. And so he finally brings him out. And so, you know, and then he's anointed by God's prophet, which you would think would be a really cool thing, right? And lead to a lot of really, really great stuff. Everybody would be excited about you. Well, it led to several years of being hunted by Saul and his life being in danger to the point he actually had to go leave the country for a while. So, I mean, that's enough to make almost anybody feel a little despondent and like, I thought God was talking to me, you know, and now here, look what's happened. So he becomes king, and he's king during a time of a lot of war, which is typical in those ancient times. But he's a man of war. And that's how he became known, as a fighter and a man of war. Yet, we read through his Psalms, he had such a heart as well, as a poet. In fact, when he died, they called him the writer of songs for Israel. But, you know, you may or may not be familiar with the story, but he's been king, he's been through a lot in life. He's written a lot of these Psalms. He's called a man after God's own heart. That's why God chose him. And his men are all out at war, probably been out for months at war, and then he sees one of his captains, I think it was, of his army, sees his wife bathing on the rooftop, which I have to think was kind of a strategic move by Bathsheba, you know, to bathe on the rooftop. In the middle of the day, it looks like. Anyway, so, he goes and he has an affair with one of his leaders' wives. And then he he makes sure her husband gets killed. So basically,
Didn't he assign the husband to a perilous position in the line, or a perilous post, so that he would be killed in battle? Is
Yeah.
that how that worked?
Yeah, he tried various ways to hide it. So Bathsheba gets pregnant. So he's basically orchestrates an adultery, a murder, and then has a child. And then sometime later, one of God's prophets comes to David and he tells him a story. His name's Nathan, and he tells him a story about a man. I want to say took sheep and he had a bunch of sheep, and he took a man's who only had one for a meal that he was going to have. And David, his true heart comes out at this point. He's angry. He goes, that man should die. That's terrible. And then Nathan is probably scared to death to tell the king this. He goes, well, that's you. So you think about how would you deal with that sort of thing. But I tell this story because one thing that comes out of that conversation is David asked for forgiveness, and Nathan said, God's already forgiven you. Now, we could kind of debate that, and I'm not here to debate when did he forgive him, why did he forgive him. But the truth is, God had already forgiven him. And I say that because I believe that forgiveness, in my experience, forgiveness is key to gratitude. You may not think of that a lot. Sometimes I used to think gratitude was just being aware of how much good stuff you have. Teach people to say thank you, but I tell you, but there's a sense in which one of the keys to gratitude, I believe, is forgiveness. There's a story in John chapter 9 where Jesus is walking along with his disciples. They see a man a blind beggar who'd been blind since birth. And they say, well, who sinned? Because what made him be blind? Was it something he did wrong or something his parents did wrong? Which is a common view. And not really unlike the way we look at things today, to be honest. And Jesus said, neither. And so it's a beautiful story, really, that unfolds if you go back and read John chapter 9. But I just say that to think that one of the keys in my life to learning to be grateful is to forgive. And have a forgiving spirit. Somehow they're connected with me. Learning to forgive people who I think may have hurt me in the past. And not may have hurt, but probably did. Whether they meant to or not. Maybe learning to forgive parents. Learning to forgive siblings. Learning to forgive people who hurt you. Learning to forgive a teacher or a friend. Or just life. Or forgive God. Or forgive, all these things, little things that we hold on to. I was thinking about the story of the woman that they brought Jesus, this woman who they found in the act of adultery. Well, they didn't bring the guy, but they brought her. And that's the story where Jesus writes in the sand and people have debated about what he's writing. But the thing is, they all left. And then he said, your accusers left. And then he said he didn't accuse her. And so I think about what that must have felt like to be standing before Jesus, guilty. And he basically says, I don't hold this against you. I don't hold it against you. And so I was thinking about people there with stones ready to stone this woman and thinking they're going to catch Jesus and Jesus is going to have to agree with them, and then they're going to stone this woman. Which I don't even know if they cared about stoning. They were more interested in putting Jesus down. But and I was thinking about how they all left, And it said from the oldest to the youngest, and maybe the oldest, it kind of hit them a little bit more. I don't know. But I was thinking about figuratively how sometimes we feel like we hold on to stones our whole life, you know, and maybe somebody who hurt us years and years ago, and figuratively we're gripping hold of something, you know, and how hard but how freeing it is just to relax and let that go. And to let, and for me, that's been a key to gratitude. Because when I hold a stone for someone else, it's hard for me to be grateful. It's easier for me to be more like a victim. If only they hadn't done this to me, this could have happened. If only, you know, and then you could fill in the blank. And then the last thing that, as far as all that goes, is forgiving myself. Most of us hold some of those stones for ourselves. And I think that's maybe one of the most important things to forgive in order to be grateful is ourselves. You know, and you think, well, I feel so lowly and I'm going to be so grateful, but if we're full of, if we're not able to forgive ourselves, it's hard to be grateful. They asked Jesus, did this guy sin and that created this condition in his life? And he said, no, that's not it. You got it wrong. You know, and maybe that guy felt that way. Maybe that blind guy felt like, I must have done something wrong to be in this situation. You know, and maybe to overhear that, and that sense of gratitude that can come when we learn how to forgive even ourselves. And so there's something about it, that's been my experience, is that as I've been able to not carry around guilt. It's funny how I've been, you know, grown up in the church all my life, and how guilt-ridden I've known so many, not all, but so many Christians to be. And yet we would celebrate the resurrection every week, and we celebrate God forgives, He loves and forgives, and yet we would go on feeling so unforgiven all the time because we're not perfect, you know? And we do stupid stuff, and we keep doing it, and yet they think, well, but that's no surprise. And, you know, it's almost like we were looking at God and saying, see the condition I'm in, you know, how did this happen? And we're holding all these stones. Well, it happened because this person, I wasn't raised right, or this person did me wrong, or look at the stupid things I've done. And then to hear Nathan say, you know, He's already forgiven you. That's not the point. That's not the point. When you hold on to grudges, even against yourself, you can't be full of gratitude. And so anyway, there's other keys, but I'll just kind of throw that out there. That's what I wanted to share this morning, is learning how to just relax and drop those stones we may have been carrying our whole lives. And I think that we got to drop them over and over and over. They creep in. And so what's your experience with gratitude or any of these things?
Okay.